Vince, thank you. Thank you for the biggest break of my life. And I've never known a man more dedicated to what he does and passionate about what he does than watching you.
I'm coughing like Jerry Lewis.
Yeah,
You remember my imitations of Jerry Lewis?
I love your imitations of
Yeah,
Jerry
we
Lewis.
we went to Japan many years ago, and he had me Jerry Lewising everybody, didn't you?
Yeah.
I was, oh, it's Mr. DiBiase.
Yeah.
I remember that.
But the funniest part of that trip was getting kissed by a geisha guy.
Yeah, that was. Now, if you don't know exactly what we're talking about, my book is Wrestling Fixed. I didn't know it was broken. There's an entire chapter about this gentleman here, Ted DiBiase, the $1 million man. Can you lend me $5?
Yeah, checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail. I like that. I like that. So, people are not really sure how the $1 million man came to be, how the $1 million man was created. Can you give us the backstage buzz on that?
I remember getting a call from Bruce Pritchard. I was in Japan. This is when me and Stan Hansen were tag team partners.
Right.
And, WrestleMania 3 had just taken place. They break a world indoor attendance record.
Yes.
And I realized that if I was going to stay relevant in wrestling, that I was going to have to.
You couldn't
work.
just be Ted DiBiase anymore?
Well, I mean, I had to go work for Vince.
Yes.
And so
Russo?
Bruce Pritchard.
Russo?
Oh God. Heavens no.
No. We'll cut that part out.
But so Bruce Pritchard and I were good friends, and we were talking in Houston. He says, I'm getting ready to go to New York and see about getting a job. And I said, well, when you do, I said, just throw my name out. I worked for them years back, and just see if they're interested, because I had a really good deal in Japan.
Yes.
I was Stan's tag team partner, and I could have stayed there for the rest of my career.
Oh, I know that.
So I get back from Japan, and I have a message. Well, actually, I did. I'm still in Japan. I got back to the hotel one night. And there's a message: call Bruce Pritchard ASAP.
Wow.
So I called Bruce, and he said, 2 things have happened, Ted, since you left. And he says, number one, when you go back to Mid-South, Bill Watts will no longer be your boss. He said he sold it to Jimmy Crockett.
Yes, right.
And he said, the second thing you need to know is that Vince McMahon is extremely interested in you. And he says, don't sign anything with Crockett until you have a chance to talk to Vince.
Oh, so you could have been one of the Jim Crockett.
I could have been. So, I got that call from Vince, and went up there, and it was funny. The first trip up there, he just told me, he says, look, Ted, he says you have, your mic skills are great. You're great in the ring. You're the total package. He says, and I have an idea. And he says, it's my idea. It's fresh. It's new. He says, there's a lot of things in wrestling that have been done over and over and over. He says, but this is fresh and new. He says, but here's the deal. I can't tell you what it is unless you agree to come on board, because
Really? Wow.
I don't want to give away a great idea.
Absolutely.
And then you go somewhere else and do it.
Right.
And so, I played kind of, like, I don't know why, but I was hesitant. I said, well, I need to think about that and talk it over with my wife. And he says, okay, great. So, the one person that I always went to when I had a question about the business was Terry Funk. I called Terry. I told him about my conversation with Vince. And he said, Teddy, he says, if Vince McMahon has an idea and says it's tailor-made for you, he says, pack your bag and don't look back. Go.
Yeah.
And so I called Vince and said, I'm your guy.
Well.
And I said, so what is it? He says, no, I'm not gonna tell you on the phone. He says, I want to fly you and your wife both up here.
Really?
So
Wow.
he flies us both to New York, limousine to Stanford, and they entertained my wife, and I went. And so Vince kind of laid it out there. He said the one thing that everybody hates is someone who bullies people with their wealth.
That's true.
They just flaunt their wealth and everything. And he says, and like most bullies, they talk real big, but in reality, most of them are cowards.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, my dad always told me that. And he said, that's the essence of this character. And he says, and you're that type of heel, what we in the business call, excuse the expression, chicken heel. You talk real big, you can wrestle, but you cheat all the time.
Yeah.
And so he says, this character is, we haven't named him, but you're going to have all this money and you're going to throw your money around. And he says, we're going to do some vignettes before people ever see you in the ring. I am like almost speechless. He says, you're going to fly first class. You're going to have limousine service every day from airport to hotel to Coliseum back to, everywhere that people sees you publicly, they're going to see the appearance of wealth.
Right.
And he says, as that character, I'm going to try to make you wealthy.
Wow.
How do you say no?
How do you say hama?
And so I was just like beside myself, and I still remember. And he says, "Now, okay." And so I signed with him, and I still had an obligation for a little while to Japan, and he says, "Yeah, finish your obligations, and then we'll start you." And so he says, "Now the limousine's waiting for you. We've got you at the Helmsley Palace."
Oh my God!
In New York City, which is one of the finest hotels.
Not owned by Hunter Hearst Helmsley, by the way. Right.
And so he says, we have a room for you and your wife there. And he says, the limousine is yours. Go anywhere you want and have a good time and start being the $1 Million Man.
That's when he said, start being the $1 Million Man.
Well, he didn't say $1 Million Man. And he said, we haven't named this guy. And I just off the top of my head, I said, he sounds like $1 Million Man to me. And he goes, the $1 Million Man he is.
Bingo. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great. So that character was so fabulous. People still associate you with that. And you're still WWE. Yeah. Tell everybody what you're doing these days with your ministry.
Well, along the way, I mean, it's kind of like in all the traveling that we did, it's like we as wrestlers started traveling like rock stars.
Yes, you did.
All over the country, all over the world. And a lot of us started acting like rock stars. And, for me, I mean, I wrote a book about it. I was unfaithful to my wife. And along the way, I got caught in that. And it was the most difficult time in my life. I thought I was going to lose her. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I truly repented, and it was the beginning of me coming back. I had a very strong faith in God when I was very young,
yes,
and I just drifted away. This brought me back, but I never envisioned that it would eventually lead me to be ordained into the ministry,
right,
and start traveling and speaking in churches. And I speak to a lot of men because I have been through most of the things that men deal with in terms of life. And so the ministry started, and I went full time, I think, in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And it scared my wife. She was like, "Oh, I don't know.
What happened? Has someone hypnotized you?"
Yeah. But I mean, Melanie and I are together today.
That's great.
We have been married for 40 years now.
She's terrific.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, because had you heard my confession, I mean, I just knew I was done. Right. I just knew that I'd blown the best thing in my life.
Yeah.
And her words to me, she says, "Now, I'm not going to make you a promise. I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this." She said, "But I serve a God of restoration, not divorce."
Mm-hmm.
And so, not for you, but for God, I'm going to try to make this work. And
it worked.
It worked.
Yeah. One last question. Well, two questions. First of all, where can people find you on social media?
www.milliondollarman.com.
Can I get that laugh out of you?
Always.
You know what? I want to ask you, can you lend me $5?
Everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
I forgot to ask one more question, even though, and I'll give you some cash for this. Vince McMahon, the man who made your career outside of the ring financially, retired recently.
Yes.
No matter what the circumstances, what would you like to say to him if he's watching this? He's out there.
Vince, thank you. Thank you for the biggest break of my life. And I've never known a man more dedicated to what he does and passionate about what he does than watching you. You were a man driven, and I've heard you say it. He said, I just absolutely love what I do. And what he loved to do, I mean, he took wrestling to a plateau that I don't think anybody ever could have. So thank you, Vince, very, very much.
Bill Apter with the $1 Million Man. He's still got it. I'll give you that $5 when the camera's off. And if you wouldn't mind pointing out to the camera, we'll see you at the matches.
Yes.
Yeah.